gilded cage, the velvet rope, a quiet loss of every hope. I played by rules I didn't write, and lost you to the freezing night. We danced within the crowded halls, a million eyes upon the walls. You offered me a different life, away from all this quiet strife. But I was bound by family ties, a prisoner of the social lies. The grand betrayal was my own. I left you standing there alone. I traded passion for the gold, a devastating story told. I watched you sail across the sea, while I remained unhappily. The decades passed in silent grace, a frozen smile upon my face. I lived the life they said I should, a hollow statue made of wood. But now the years are fading fast, I'm breaking from the heavy past. I'm falling down into the truth, reclaiming all my stolen youth. Oh, the tragedy of an innocent age, trapped forever on a wealthy stage. I pushed away the only love I knew, to do exactly what they told me to. But out here in the quiet evening chill, I'm letting go of my exhausted will. I'm falling for the memory of your face, finding comfort in an empty space. The gilded cage is finally breaking down. I'm walking far away from this lonely town. I raised the children, played the part with a deeply broken, aching heart. I sat beside the window pane and watched the heavy falling rain. You sent a letter from afar, a glowing bright and distant star. But I was terrified to fall, and so I built another wall. The grand betrayal of my soul is finally taking its full toll. But underneath the faded dress, I'm craving one last sweet caress. The golden carriage drives away, I'm stepping to the light of day. I couldn't be the one you need, I let my terrified spirit bleed. But in the shadows of the night, I know my feelings were so right. Oh, the tragedy of an innocent age, steady ticking clock, a desperate spirit trapped inside the lock. I wanted fireworks and brilliant skies, but only found these suffocating lies. Stories of a grand romance, a sweeping, beautiful and daring dance. I married you to find that soaring thrill, but every day was incredibly still. You offered me a simple, steady hand, but I was craving an exotic land. The grand betrayal was my wandering eye. I started building up a massive lie. Crashing like a tidal wave, a terrifying, dark and lonely grave. The lovers that I chose all turned away when a heavy price was finally due to pay. I'm falling from the dizzying, brilliant height into the crushing, unforgiving night. Oh, the tragedy of a poison dream floating down a desperate shallow stream. I chased an illusion that was never real, because I was desperately trying to feel. The grand betrayal tore our home apart, a brutal dagger in your trusting heart. Now I'm falling for the final bitter piece, a dark and terrifying sudden release. I swallowed down the sorrow and the bitter dust, a tragic victim of my own disgust. You stood beside me as the fever grew, a loyal man that I completely threw. I traded all your quiet, genuine care for an empty promise floating in the air. The silken dresses and the carriage rides were nothing but a desperate place to hide. I see the devastation in your crying eyes as I collapse beneath my endless lies. The poison burns away the fantasy and leaves the terrifying truth for me. The romantic illusions crumble to the floor. I'm locking up the heavy iron door. The beautiful novels led me far astray and stole the beauty of the everyday. I'm fading out into the heavy dark, extinguishing the final desperate spark. Oh, the tragedy of The city burns with a terrible, violent rage. We're trapped inside a deeply terrifying cage. I held my family tightly in the freezing cold. A devastating story that is fiercely told. We were condemned by a completely broken law, the cruelest judgment that the people ever saw. My husband sentenced to the terrifying blade, while I was weeping in the terrifying shade. But you appeared inside the dark and gloomy cell, a quiet angel walking through a living hell. You loved me from a distance, never asked for more, and now you're standing at the heavy iron door. The grand betrayal was the switch you quietly made. You dragged him, took his place within the bitter shade. You sent us far away upon the midnight sea, and stayed behind to die for him, to die for me. The carriage rolls away into the distant night. I read the letter that you somehow found to write. You said it is a far, far better thing you do than anything that you have ever known or knew. I'm falling down into a devastating grief, heartbreaking, beautiful and dark relief. Oh, the tragedy of a love that goes unsaid. You walked in silence to the city of the dead. You gave your life to save the man I deeply loved, and sent your spirit to the quiet skies above. The grand betrayal of your own exhausted heart, you tore your solitary, lonely world apart. Now I'm falling for the memory of your face, a quiet hero in a terrifying place. I'll tell the children of the sacrifice you made before you faded in the cold and bitter shade. The crowds were cheering as the heavy weapon fell. You never flinched, you never let the terror swell. You held the hand of a frightened, lonely girl as you departed from this terrifying world. The blood is washing out into the city streets, a revolution pulsing in the heavy beats. But I am safely resting on a foreign shore, because you opened up the terrifying door. A far, far better rest you finally go to now, a heavy burden lifted from your weary brow. I see your shadow in the setting of the sun. The terrifying, brutal battle has been won. You love me silently, you love me to the end. My beautiful, tragic, and devoted friend. Oh, the tragedy of a love that goes unsaid. You walked in silence to the city of the dead. voice inside the darkness calling out my name. A beautiful and terrifying, dangerous game. You taught me how to sing the stars awake and pulled me down into the underground lake. I was a fragile chorus girl without a face, until you brought me to this hidden magic place. You poured your brilliant genius in my empty soul into completely terrifying dark control. I heard the music of the night inside my head, but then I saw the face behind the porcelain mask, a tragedy of sorrow in a gruesome task. The grand betrayal happened when I saw the boy, my childhood friend who brought me innocent joy. I realized your love was just an iron cage, a terrifying prison on a hidden stage. You dragged me to the bottom of the cavern floor and locked the heavy, terrifying iron door. You made me choose between my freedom and his life, a terrifying bargain cutting like a knife. I'm falling down into the shadows of your mind, leaving the brilliant stage completely behind. Oh, the tragedy of a dark, obsessed desire, burning everything inside a desperate fire. I gave you my compassion, gave you a single kiss to pull you back from the terrifying dark abyss. The grand betrayal tore your weary heart in two, and I walked away and finally turned my back on you. But in that final moment you released the chain and let me walk into the beautiful cleansing rain. I'm falling for the childhood love I always knew, leaving the broken genius fading in the blue. The torches flickered on the damp and weeping stone as you retreated to your dark and empty throne. You smashed the mirrors in a terrifying rage and vanished from the story and the gilded stage. The music boxes play a haunting, quiet tune beneath the pale and solitary silver moon. I found my freedom, found my safety in the light, but part of me is always waiting in the night. A bittersweet and terrifying deep regret, a musical obsession I will not forget. The chandeliers have crashed upon the dusty floor. I'm closing up the terrifying heavy door. The mask is left behind upon the velvet chair, a tragic token floating in the freezing air. I'm walking far away into the morning sun. The terrifying, beautiful opera is done. Oh, the tragedy of a dark, obsessed desire, burning tears have washed into the sea. Since I allowed them all to conquer me, I broke the only promise that I ever made, and watched you vanish in the freezing shade. I was a foolish girl of 19 years, controlled by family and ridiculous fears. They said you lacked the fortune and the proper name. They said our union was a total shame. The grand betrayal was my weak compliance. I traded genuine passion for a cold alliance. I told you that we could never tie the knot, and broke the beautiful future that we sought. You looked at me with devastating cold disgust, a terrible shattering of innocent trust. You went away to fight upon the raging ocean, while I was drowning in my own exhausted motion. Now you've returned, a decorated, wealthy man, a stranger walking in a very quiet land. You look right through me with a freezing stare, as if I wasn't even standing there. I'm falling down into the heavy, bitter past, realizing the sorrow is designed to last. Oh, the tragedy of a deeply persuaded mind, leaving the greatest treasure completely behind. I broke your heart to please a hollow, empty crowd, and now my terrifying regret is crying out aloud. The grand betrayal was a poison in my vein. I've lived a decade in a quiet, heavy rain, but now I'm falling for you all pure heart walking on a tainted road, a heavy sorrow that I never showed. I gave you all my honesty and quiet grace, but you threw it back directly in my face. The grand betrayal happened on our wedding night, when all the hidden secrets came into the light. I listened to your past and offered my embrace. I thought you'd offer mercy in the very same space, but your forgiveness was a hypocritical lie. You looked at me with venom in your freezing eye. You cast me out into the bitter, brutal cold. A tragic, heartbreaking story to be told. I worked the barren fields to barely stay alive, while you went running off, just trying to survive. I never asked for anything but genuine love, but I was cursed by the unforgiving skies above. The man who caused my ruin came returning back. He offered me salvation on a darker track. I waited for you endlessly to come and save the shattered, weary woman heading for the grave. But your delay was fatal to my fragile soul. I lost the final fragments of my self-control. The tragic innocence of a broken dream washed away completely in a raging stream. You held me to a standard that you failed to meet, and left me bleeding out upon the lonely street. The grand betrayal tore my weary heart in two. I gave up my salvation, waiting there for you. Now I'm falling deep into the endless night, surrendering the struggle and the bitter fight. I found a final peace upon the ancient stone. I'm leaving this cruel and wicked world alone. You finally came back to me when it was far too late. I had already surrendered to my darkened fate. The blood upon my hands was just the tragic cost of navigating all the love that we had lost. You wept and begged forgiveness for your foolish pride, but everything inside of me had long since died. We shared a fleeting moment running from the law, a beautiful illusion that the heavens saw, but nothing can undo the damage that was done. I'm staring at the setting of the final sun. I'm resting in the ruins of an ancient place, awaiting my departure with a quiet grace. The morning sun is rising on the standing stones. I'm leaving behind my weary, aching bones. You held my hand and finally understood the pain, but I am washing away inside the summer rain. The heartbreak and the suffering are finally done. The ultimate battle has been tragically won. The tragic innocence of a broken dream washed away completely in a raging ocean stone. I'm resting alone. Goodbye, my love. Salt on my coat, your name in my throat. I count the waves like debts I never wrote. The ship groans low, the sky turns gray. I cross the dark just to make you stay. Your letters came thin as winter light. Fine, don't worry, in a trembling hand. But I heard the break beneath the polite. So I crossed the water without a plan. At the estate gates, cold lion stone, I swallow pride like bitter tea. They call me bold in a careful tone, as if courage were indecency. I keep my voice steady, I keep my face calm, stitching your damage with borrowed balm. Every hallway holds a hush of blame, and I burn inside this quiet frame. I came to pull you from the ruins of a vow that cracked behind closed doors. I came with restraint, clean hands, no thunder, but love found me on those marble floors. I hate that my heart learned the shape of him while I was repairing your broken view. I crossed the ocean to rescue my sister and fell through the wreckage into something true. He wears his manners like a jeweled knife, cuts you with kindness and calls it care. You flinch at praise, apologize for life, like you're a stain in his polished stare. I find your bruises and what goes unsaid, and dinner smiles that never reach. I carry your secrets like bread in my bag, and practice patience I didn't teach. Tonight you cried where the roses climb. Said he broke me slow so nobody knew. I said then we leave, you said in time. And the moon turned steel blue, and love stood near with steady eyes, not asking, not taking, just seeing me whole. I wanted to run from the tenderness there, but it followed me down to the soul. At dawn, I'll pack your courage in a case, button your coat, wipes off from your cheek. Beyond the gates, a kind of sky takes place, and in the wreckage, love learns how to speak. In a town this small, the walls have ears, and Sunday smiles can sharpen into spears. I learned the cost of a tender touch, and still I wanted it too much. They taught us love should be clean and quiet, blessed by bells and borrowed vows. But you looked to me like holy riot, like truth could live outside a louse. One summer night behind the market gate, your promise tasted new and wild. I said we shouldn't, you said too late, and I forgot how fear once smiled. Then whispers started thin and fast, a wind that knows how to ruin. They called me reckless for what we had, and called you gone for doing. I'm wearing shame like a second skin, while the whole town sings where I've been. You said you'd stay, you said you'd choose, and left me holding the blame you used. Still I fall in love, still I fall apart. A tender, costly kind of heart. If forgiveness is a door, let it open somehow. Not for them, not yet. For me, for now. My mother's eyes went hard with fear. My friends went silent one by one. The sermon sounded bright and clear, like mercy was a loaded gun. I walked through stairs like rain through cloth. Couldn't stay dry, couldn't stay proud. And your hands were gentle, soft, but your goodbye was loud. I held the truth no ring could name, a life that changed my body's song. They wanted punishment dressed as shame, wanted me to say I'm wrong. But late at night, when lamps burn low, I feel a hush that doesn't judge. A quiet voice says love can be real, even when it leaves a grudge. So let